Hey, hello, this is Sean from the podcast Thrive Not Survive After Abuse. And we are already at episode 94. We're coming close to 100, don't you think? Yeah. All right, I hope you listened to the podcast of yesterday where I was talking about who is that voice that is talking to you. And I got a couple of questions actually around it. Some people thought actually that I was going to talk, the voice that is your intuition. And yeah, I promise I will come back to that really soon. Actually, I did that a few episodes ago already, but maybe it's a good topic to see what the differences are about the voices that I was talking about and just your intuition and how do you know to listen to what voice. And the other question I had was, excuse me a little bit, the other question I had is the voice that is talking to you, is that the same when you build up a story in your head? Now, the short answer is actually yes. If you let that voice keep talking to you, it actually goes and um, build a story in your head. And most of the time we talk then about a little bit the negative or the very critical, the cynical story, the voice that want to put you down, maybe lure you to a direction that you don't want to go. That's typically the voice that we talk about when you build up stories in your head. But there is something special about building stories in your head. First of all, um, you could also say, hey, I can only build stories in my head when there is actually a lack of data, so you don't have any data, or you don't have any facts, or there's no proof. So there's actually a lot of room in your head to build up that story. And stories are actually always therefore based upon assumptions. And assumption, that's a really bad expression, but sometimes assumptions are the mother of all f ups. Huh? So I don't use that a word a lot, so forgive me for that, for once in a while doing it, but that kind of makes it clear what it is. Huh? And the second thing, or maybe that's sometimes the first thing, it's always based on what we have experienced earlier. So I have a little example here. It's silly as it is, but I might see, a guy walking in a restaurant where we are eating, and that guy might look like someone that I think my girlfriend likes, right? And before you know, I build up a whole story that if she would meet him, that she would think like, oh, what a cute guy, stuff like that. See, these are all made up stories. There's no proof that she would like the guy. There's no no data. That's only assumption. It sits in our heads. We can make up these really crazy stories. So sometimes that's based upon, and you think, okay, that's a weird example. Well, maybe it's not such a weird example. Maybe you had in a previous relationship where maybe your partner was very unfaithful with a similar looking guy or in a similar looking situation. So your mind is kind of it's a lazy instrument. It always triggers something and it goes to the shortest things it can find. It doesn't dig deep. It just, the first thing it finds when it recognizes something, that is what it will use to actually save you in the situation that you're in. So it's building up stories is actually a safety mechanism from a psychological point of view, how weird as that may sound, right? So you have to think about that a lot of the way how our brain functions is a pretty old principle. So you basically were always in a situation in the very, 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 very past where it was either you fight or you flight, but you always want to protect yourself. And since you did not have the time to really deeply analyze the situation, when you live in an environment where you are in constant danger, you have to make a quick assessment. And if you have to make a quick assessment, you have to do it based upon your intuition and the experience you had. Does that make sense? So, also the way how a part of our brain, we call that a limbic system, still works is actually according to that same principle. It doesn't go look for data. It just finds the first thing and it recognizes the situation and it starts to build up very quickly a story. And if you let the story building happening in your head, you could make really bad assumptions and come to really good conclusions, and you could have like a really weird discussions with your spouse or with your girlfriend or with your boyfriend or with your partner, whatever it is. Now, who has not been there, right? I have been there. I would be the first one to admit that sometimes I make, really, really weird assumption. Maybe my girlfriend looks in the direction of another guy. Maybe she looks way past the guy, but I already had the assumption that she would like that guy, and therefore I think she looks at the guy and then she has say, no, actually I looked past the guy. I just wanted to see why, whatever it was. Maybe I looked at a menu at the wall or something. And so you make it up. And then to make it worse, sometimes we even want it to be true, because we don't want to be wrong. It's another principle that's in our head. We hate to be wrong. So therefore, we are starting to argue about silly things just to make sure that we are right, because it's not really a nice feeling to be wrong. So then we say something like, hey, well, I saw you looking in that direction, instead of thinking like, oh, she said no, so I should believe her instead of believing my own assumptions, right? So that's a little bit, I'm not sure if that little example was something really relevant to you, but I'm sure you can come up with a situation where you have that. So the story that's in your head, you can always make a decision. Yes, I believe the story in my head, or no, I don't believe the story in my head. And then accordingly to that, you can decide to react or not to react. So you actually have two opportunities, right, to deal with your story. First, do I believe it or not? And then you get a second opportunity, do I react or not? Now, if you believe it and you react on it, and it's not such a good situation, the situation that I did, I can guarantee you that is a recipe for disaster and a really nice argument that probably leads to nothing, right? So just a little side advice. If you're in a relationship, you're better and you believe in the relationship, first and foremost, check first what you see. And secondly, always believe what your partner is saying to you. That most of the time, and hopefully all of the time, is actually true. And your mind can play a lot of tricks with you. If you have a little bit of a tendency to, if you have a tendency to jealousy, if you have a tendency, maybe you're not in a good spot, maybe you have gone through a few things in your relationship, and often if you came out of bad relationships, your mind is very well capable of building up the same stories, and that's not a good thing, right? This is in a relationship, but I do that on purpose because remember, this podcast, we don't always talk about it, but often we do. But we this podcast is specifically geared to people with an abuse history, right? And one of the things that's very common with abuse victims, probably about 80%, if you look at the data, that they have trust issues. And if you have trust issues, you are very well capable of making up stories to confirm why you cannot trust someone. Does that make sense? So you're very well capable of making up stories, to not trust someone. Right now, I know that's understandable to what you have gone through. But if you want to go through your abuse and you want to heal from it, get over it, whatever that is. Now, I don't like the term "get over it," right? I just like to think about to know how to cope and to deal with it. I like that a little bit better. Then you have to be a little bit more alert and stop yourself in the track of building up stories, because I can guarantee you most of the time they're not true. And at some point in time, you have to take that risk, because could they be true? Yeah, absolutely, they could be true. And maybe once in a while they are true. But most of the time, these stories that we build up in our head, when you have still that voice talking to you of the past, are actually not true. All right, so there was a little bit of, a continuation of the story of yesterday. What is the voice? Who's that voice talking to you? Now, yesterday we said, it could be actually more than one voice, how strange that is. But if you keep listening to it, then that voice is also starting to make up really good stories in your head. And then you have to pause, and you always have to think, do I have the data actually that support this story? Do I have the facts that support this story? Do I have the proof that support this story? Or am I making assumptions here? Or maybe I'm reacting of something that is similar in the past. And then last but not least, Do I decide to believe this story or not? Or do I react and not react? Now, here is the thing, right? Did you hear that there's a difference to say stop making up those stories? Yeah, so I didn't say that. Sometimes these things happen really fast in your head. It's not like, once upon a time. That's not how the story goes. It goes really fast. You just have to see a scenario as I just described to you, and the story is already there. So try not to fight those emotions, do that afterwards. What you first and foremost need to do is see if you can react differently than you maybe are inclined to do, and how you want to react from the gut. So try not to do that, specifically if you know that you have a history, maybe with bad relationship, maybe so far as abused. Be extra alert, right? I'm not saying that you have to be naive and believe everything that people are telling you, but that's just a little bit how you want to go. It's specifically in situations of a relationship. Trust needs to be built, that's for sure, absolutely true. But more than that, trust is actually almost always, if not 100% always, a choice. You either choose to trust someone and or not. So things like saying, trust needs to be earned. It's two sides, right? Trust needs to be earned. Maybe that is a little bit true, but most of the time it's actually choice. It's your choice to trust someone or not. And if you feel you cannot make that choice, maybe you're not ready for the relationship, you need to do something about that, or maybe it's not the right relationship for you to be in. So that is maybe something for another topic. All right, today was a little bit more serious, maybe. We need to do that too. Yesterday we had a lot of laughter when I was with my group, The Place. If you want to listen to that as well, wait for us next week, Tuesday. We will do it again. A different topic, of course. And if you have more questions about the voice in your head, what voice is talking to you, or maybe the buildup of stories in your head, just let us know and we'll talk about it a little bit more. If not, then I'll come back tomorrow with a different topic in the podcast, Thrive, Not Survive After Abuse. This was Shah, and I'll hope to hear you back tomorrow. Bye-bye.